Hello everyone, and welcome to Sunup. I'm Lyndall Stout. With the start of spring just around the corner, it's time to put a plan together now to have a successful alfalfa growing season. For more, here's Sunup's Dave Deacon and our Extension Forage System Specialist, Dr. Alex Rocateli.
As we're warming up across the state, things are starting to green up, and Alex, alfalfa is on that list.
Yes. After all that snow, we are seeing that the alfalfa is start to green up, to break dormancy. And now it's time for you to think about first soil sampling, analysis, and the fertilization as soon as possible. Ideally, let's go there every year, January, February, early March, and get soil samples. But if that's too much, let's do at least every third year. What I mean with that? So let's say we go this year right now and you do some soil sampling and analysis. And according to recommendations, we use that recommendation for this year, next year, and the other. And so in the third year, we do another soil sampling analysis and use that one for the following three. After, when we have how much fertilization we need to put there, how much fertilizer, first thing is, let's put it as soon as possible, because we want to avoid that when we broadcast the fertilizer get in touch with too much of the new foliage that's coming in wet, because that can really hurt the foliage. Now, if the total fertilization, the total amount of fertilizer you need to put there exceed 500 pounds per acre, please split that in two to avoid high salinity. I would say apply half right now, and right after the first cut, go there and apply the other half.
What nutrients do alfalfa plants really rely on throughout their growth cycle?
I would say in quantity would be phosphorus and potassium, but we cannot neglect other macro and macro nutrients. That's why it's very important to follow what we have on the soil analysis results.
Now that we have the plant out of the ground, we really do have to kind of change focus to the herbicides.
Right, that's true. And we are in the edge where we're supposed to be changing the mind which kind of herbicide to be using, because until this point, alfalfa was dormant during all the winter and very early spring. So during that time, we could apply some herbicides such as diron, hexazinon, and terbacil. However, now that the plants are starting to get active, we cannot apply those herbicides. We need to think about more selective herbicides that can control the grassy weeds. It will not hurt our growing alfalfa. So we have other herbicides available, such as cetoxidin and clethodim. Those are two good herbicides that we can apply. When applying those two herbicides, I would tell the best time to apply is during the first 2 weeks of growth or the 2 weeks of regrowth after a cut. Why? First, that's the time that the weeds are coming up, younger, and it's easy to knock them down. And second, those herbicides that have a hay and grazing restriction of 15 days. What that means? After that you apply the herbicide, you need to wait like 2 weeks, 15 days, so for you cut for hay. And we know in Oklahoma, producers start to cut alfalfa every 28 days to 42 days. So if you're applying the 2 first weeks, I'm pretty sure that we are complying with those 2 weeks, 15 days of restriction before cutting. So that's what I would like to recommend.
And producers can go to their county extension office, and then also you have an online resource for that?
Yes, we have an online resource, and especially when you talk about the herbicide, always contact the educator on your county, because they are the best person to really help you to figure out the best herbiciding according to the weeds that you have in your field.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Alex Rocateli, a Forage Systems Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Welcome to the Mesonet Weather Report. I'm Wes Lee. Spring tends to always blow into Oklahoma on strong wind gusts. This week was a perfect example of this. Wind gusts on Tuesday were high pretty much statewide. High winds create issues with common spring practices on farms and ranches like utilizing prescribed fire and spraying herbicides. Most all herbicide labels now list an acceptable wind speed to help control drift situations. The Drift Risk Advisor tool under the Agriculture tab on the Mesonet.org website can help plan around unacceptable wind situations. This tool allows producers to input or bracket acceptable winds, temperatures, or relative humidities. You can also look for upcoming rainfall. Here I have selected a wind speed of 2 to 12 miles per hour along with some other weather parameters. By using the wind direction wheel on the right, you can block off times when the winds are blowing from certain directions. The results are printed in a 1-hour forecast table. Acceptable conditions are in green and those outside your selected parameters are in red. This tool utilizes the NAM or North American model. It is always advisable to check current conditions before actually starting to spray. Gary's up next with a look at the upcoming weather outlook.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, I hope we got good relief over the state because we do have parts of Oklahoma that are in desperate need of rainfall, despite all the rain and snow that we've already received over the last few months. We do have a new drought monitor map to take a look at, so let's get right to it. We do have some changes in the map. We see increase of moderate drought, that's that tan color, up in the western panhandle and over parts of western, northwestern, and central Oklahoma. Also in south central Oklahoma, we also have an increase of severe drought in that area, a little bit darker color there. And then we see a broader increase in that yellow color, the abnormally dry conditions, signaling an area we're worried about going into drought if they don't get decent moisture. Now normally I'd show you some rainfall maps, but in case we got some relief, I'm going to go to something else that might concern agriculture across the state, and that's next week's outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. We do see increased odds of below normal temperatures across the entire state, something that's concerning if we do get another hard freeze. It is mid-March, so below normal temperatures does signal a possibility of freezing weather, so just something to keep our eye on as that time grows closer. Now over that same period next week, we do see increased odds of below normal precipitation, especially across the southern and eastern parts of the state. For northwest Oklahoma, we see increased odds of above normal precipitation. Again, something to look at as we get closer. So that's the near-term outlook. But we need to keep in mind the broader climate across the area over the next few months that makes up what's going on actually through the whole spring. The Climate Prediction Center outlooks for the spring, March through May. Remember, these do show increased odds of above normal temperatures across the entire state, but especially western Oklahoma, and below normal precipitation across the entire state, but again across western Oklahoma especially. So the near-term outlooks are weather, but the broader-term outlooks show us the climate. And we are still in La Nina conditions, so it's something to think about as we go through the spring. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
We are joined now by OSU's wheat geneticist, Dr. Brett Carver, to talk about what we're seeing today in your research greenhouses. Brett, this doesn't look good to me.
Now, this is not the normal picture we would see this time of the year. As you can see, we've lost a lot of green tissue, and these plants have gone backwards. We have freeze damage. We have winter kill inside of our greenhouse, of all places. We have more winter kill in our greenhouses than we do in our field nurseries. It was the timing of the cold period, and the severity of it, obviously, and it was severe. Plus the fact that we had transplanted our plants after vernalization process, what they would normally go through and finish right now in the field, they were well through that vernalization period. And it was that deacclimation to the cold period, plus the exposure for 2 weeks in this greenhouse that we could not keep up with the heat. Those two factors came together to cause this. This greenhouse is just not thermally insulated to the point where we can withstand sub-freezing, really sub-25 degree temperatures. That's just too cold. As we know, in the mid-20s in April, we would see this kind of damage in the field. We just saw it in February and March in the greenhouse.
Give me perspective on what type of setback this is for you and your team, or maybe even the industry.
I would say it's a significant setback. It's not the same setback we would have had we been 10 years into the breeding cycle. We are 1 year into the breeding cycle, these being our hybrid plants that we produced hybrid seed for last year. But that's a significant amount of effort that went into the planning and the execution of making that hybrid seed. This is not seed we just went to the store and bought. This is seed we made ourselves. And these are all planned crosses. Part of this is our coaxing material, in fact, that really got blitzed. And so we'll kind of set ourselves back a couple years and start back over. I may try to recover some of these hybrids through a double haploidization process, maybe speed that up a little bit. But we can't run the entire program through that. Again, now we're kind of starting over with the green tissue coming back. We're going to be pinched when it turns hot again. So we'll need to be prepared for that, and we just do our best. You know, Oklahomans, we like to do the best we can with what we have. And maybe it's time we do our best to have a little bit more. And I think we're at that point.
You mentioned 10 years that these would be the potential new varieties. What does that mean when you look a decade in the future?
We might have a void at that time. When we're looking to release a variety, we may not be releasing a variety at that time 10 years from now. We'll try to negate that and do our best we can.
Well, we admire your resiliency. Our hearts go out to you and your team because this is kind of hard to see. But keep us posted, and we wish you the best as you all try to bounce back from this.
Thanks for coming out and doing the story.
Thank you.
Well, the beginning of March in Oklahoma brings the wind, but it also brings the WASDE report. So, Kim, what was in the WASDE report this week?
Well, not much was in that report. No surprises at all. You look at U.S. wheat, 836 million bushels, the same it was last month, and exactly what the analysts were projecting. You got corn, 1.5 billion bushels, no change from last month, but slightly below the analyst projections. And soybeans at 119 million bushels, just the same as last month and the same as was expected. If you look at the world, there were some minor changes there, but no surprises. You've got wheat at 11.1 billion bushels ending stocks. That is no longer a record. It's about ties the record. It's down 111 million from last month. Corn, 1.3 billion bushels. That's up a measly 45 billion from last month and about what analysts were projecting. And soybeans at 3.1 billion bushels, no change from last month, and the same as the analysts were projecting.
So if there's little to no change in supply and demand, what's going to cause prices to change in the market?
Surprises in the market.
So what kind of surprises?
Well, if you look at surprises, when the wheat comes out of dormancy, we're wanting to know how much winter kill there was on the wheat. I talked to producers, it's growing rampant right now. However, we could have some surprises there. We could have surprises in the weather and precipitation. Availability of fertilizer and other inputs. I've talked to producers, there's a shortage of fertilizer now for top dressing. That could cause an unexpected event to wheat and lower yields. You've got exports. I think that's the big key to our prices. Is China going to come back in the market? Are exports going to remain strong? We've got the dollar, the value of the U.S. dollar. It went down for several months. It's been coming back recently, and that damages and hurts our exports. And then you've got the March 1 planting intentions report. We could have some surprises in it.
So you mentioned China, shifting outward into the world wheat production. Is there any news that's coming up there?
On China, right now it's just a wait and see situation. China's backed off on corn, beans, and wheat purchases. The Brazilian crop and Argentine crops are being harvested. Nobody knows what China's going to do right now, and I think China plays it close to the vest and will continue to do so.
So has your price expectations changed at all given this information?
Oh, maybe a little bit. Remember, the last couple of weeks I've been cautious about prices. Wheat prices have backed off about 50 cents. Corn has continued to go up. I think that's a little bit of a surprise. They're up about 20 cents. Soybeans at $11.90, up 40 cents, just minor there. So, yeah, I'm still nervous about the market. I'm still positive for soybeans holding. Corn looks like it's going to hold pretty good. Wheat, I'm still nervous about those prices.
All righty, Kim. Dr. Kim Anderson, Grain Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Good morning, Oklahoma. Welcome to Cow-Calf Corner. This week, our topic is going to relate back to last week's. We talked about the 3 objectives of a breeding season with beef cattle last week. The second objective that we talk about this week is how do we get cows mated to bulls with as much genetic potential to enhance the profit potential of that next calf crop as possible. As we think about modern genetic prediction, the technology that's available to us, we're going to, in most sire summaries, we're going to be taking a look at 20-some genetic predictors for a variety of traits. There's multiple genetic predictors of calving ease. We have several EPDs that predict some aspect of maternal performance or another. And we have had for about 30 years a pretty significant amount of genetic prediction for things that impact carcass trait, like marbling, ribeye size, fat thickness, and carcass weight. With all those genetic predictors out there, many of them, and in some cases all of them, are going to be important in the lifetime of a particular calf. But only a handful of them, more than likely, are going to be economically significant to you based on answering several questions. First question we get into, in your own operation, when do you plan to market your calf crop? Are you an operation that markets calves at weaning, operation that runs stockers and markets your cattle as yearlings? Answering questions like that is going to dictate which traits are more economically relevant for you. It's also important to think about, are you going to be using bulls that you intend to keep replacement heifers out of that next calf crop to become cows in your operation? Answering what our intended use of and when we intend to market that calf crop becomes very important. It's also important to think about our own economic considerations. What kind of management input are we capable of providing? Those fixed resources, the economic situations, the amount of management we can put in, all have an impact on what kind of genetics we need to invest in. In addition to all those EPDs that get reported, most sire summaries are also going to be publishing what we refer to as bioeconomic indices. And when we talk about a bioeconomic index, what are we getting at? It is several EPDs lumped together with an economic weighting assigned to them that enables us to have an idea of how much money we should make or lose on a given calf crop if we intend to retain ownership all the way through finishing and sell those cattle on a carcass value basis. As I always say, there's a lot of layers to this onion. You need to look at your own individual operation and think about the unique things that are going on in it. It's going to help you to identify one or just a few of the traits that are of primary economic importance to your operation and spend your bull buying dollar accordingly. Next week and in weeks to come, we're going to get more specific in addressing what EPDs do we look at. If calving ease is a selection criteria, what EPDs do we look at relative to growth and potential carcass merit, and what type of EPDs actually fall under that maternal heading. Look forward to visiting with you then.
We're joined now by Dr. Derrell Peel, our livestock marketing specialist. Derrell, spring is just around the corner. Let's talk about the cattle and beef markets, starting with feeder cattle.
Feeder cattle markets, you know, we had a tough February, obviously, with the storm. We had a lot of auctions shut down for a couple of weeks. No volume or very low. We had like a 75% reduction in 2 weeks. So those cattle all showed up after that. Big volumes a week after. Now we're getting wheat pasture cattle coming in, so we're going to see additional big volumes. But that said, the prices for these lightweight calves are actually showing kind of springtime strength. There's some folks looking ahead to greener pastures and so on. So the little cattle are doing well. The bigger feeder cattle are just kind of holding steady at this point.
What about fed cattle when you look at that sector?
You know, the fed cattle market has really struggled so far this year. We should be looking at, kind of increasing through the first quarter to a peak at the end or of first quarter, beginning of the second quarter. We haven't been able to put together that rally in any sort of sustained way. It's been pretty sluggish for the last 4 to 5 weeks. We've got lots of cattle. Of course, we did have some disruptions because of the storm and other things. So we're kind of waiting on this fed cattle market to develop and still maybe get in a spring rally, but it may be a little bit late this year.
What do you see when you look at wholesale beef and then in general beef demand?
You know, we've had generally strong prices. Wholesale beef prices increased from the first of the year until about 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago. They've peaked and come back down, but I don't really think that's an indication of sort of a loss of demand at this point. All of the indications are that beef demand is still quite strong. There's normally some sort of, you know, monthly pattern, if you will, to those wholesale prices. And again, the product is there. We're putting quite a bit of meat on the market. So all in all, I think we're doing pretty good.
Spring is here almost, as we have talked about. What should we keep in mind for the months ahead?
You know, I think what cattle producers are keeping an eye on, probably the biggest challenge for the cattle industry this year are these feed prices. We've had a tremendous run up in feed grain and oilseed prices, and so that's going to weigh more on the market. That's one of the things feedlots are dealing with. Cost of gain has gone up some. It will go up some more as we fully reflect these higher feed prices. So that's going to be a challenge kind of on the production side, if you will. Of course, we've got a lot of the country that's in drought right now too. And so another 6 weeks to 2 months, if that doesn't change, then we're going to be talking about probably some market level impacts of some parts of the country being forced to liquidate more cattle.
Okay, we'll keep all that in mind, Derrell. Good to see you today. Thanks a lot.
Foot rot's caused by a bacteria, Fusobacterium necrophorum, subspecies necrophorum, and there are some other bacteria that can also cause this disease. Normally, the first thing you're going to see with a foot rot case is lameness. And one of the things that when I was in practice that many producers want to do is as soon as they see a cow lame, they want to go out and give an antibiotic. And I would caution you about doing that before you examine that foot. Be sure and pick that foot up. If it's foot rot, you're going to find some irritation there and most likely a very foul odor. You'll also see symmetrical swelling. That means swelling on both sides of that foot. If you have swelling only on one side of that foot, it's not going to be foot rot. Now, when it comes to treating these cases, early treatment usually results in more positive outcome. We need to get that foot up, we need to clean between those toes and apply a topical medication, and then we need to give these animals an antibiotic. Now, I would consult with my veterinarian on what would be the best antibiotic to use. We also like to give a little bit of pain relief for these animals, and you need to isolate these infected animals and keep that foot dry. Prevention can be a little bit more difficult, especially during this time of the year when our environments are so messy, but sanitation is the key. If we can try to keep that foot as clean and dry as possible, we'll have a lot less likelihood of having foot rot issues. Vaccinations are a possibility. I would consult with my veterinarian about whether they recommend that or not. If you have deficiency in zinc in your diet, adding zinc to your minerals has been shown to improve foot rot issues. There's an excellent fact sheet from OSU about foot rot if you'll go to sunup.okstate.edu.
So you may have noticed that there's some mares out there that are wearing, looks like almost like racing hoods or blinkers. They actually don't have eye injuries. This is a new technology where it's like a blinker hood that will shine a light into the horse's eye to mimic day length. Traditionally, we'll use artificial lighting to increase the day length for mares to start them cycling earlier. Horses are long day breeders, so essentially they start cycling when day length increases. So essentially there were two options. Either you stall them at night, which is pretty labor intensive, or you have to place them under large outdoor lights. So instead of having big stadium lighting that covers a whole herd of mares that takes a lot of energy, they're now using just these single little hoods on the horses to bring mares into season or start them cycling earlier. For horses, we like them to start cycling early in the year because the universal birth date of horses is January 1st. So for horses that are going to be competing in futurities or other competitions where maturity is important, we need them to be born closer to that January deadline or January 1st date as possible. So by adding light to the mares, they're going to think the day length is longer than it already is and start them cycling earlier. For more information about estrus cycles and breeding in mares, go to sunup.okstate.edu.
That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can see us anytime on our website, sunup.okstate.edu, and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.